He was once accused of misunderstanding, now spoken about with a tone of respect and reflection. Cameras zoomed in, reporters froze as Trump said, maybe the media got it wrong. Maybe Islam isn't what they told us. Maybe it's about peace, discipline, and purpose. The hall went silent. For a man known for his boldness and pride, his words carried a weight that felt different this time, sincere, almost spiritual. He spoke of the Muslims he had met during his travels, of their unity, their strength, their unwavering faith. They believe in something that gives them peace, he said, and that peace is what this world has lost. The internet exploded. Clips spread faster than wildfire. Some said it was politics, others said it was truth. But those who listened closely felt something genuine, as if a man who had seen the peak of worldly power was now glimpsing the power of faith. Trump continued, "You can't ignore a belief that brings billions together in prayer every single day. You can't deny a system that values justice and family above all." Reporters tried to twist his words, but the message had already reached millions. He said Islam is not about force, but about finding peace through submission to God. For a moment, even his critics were silent. The man who once symbolized division was suddenly speaking words of unity. He admitted that the media had painted Islam unfairly for decades, and that truth cannot be hidden forever.
When I look at Muslims, he said, I see discipline, I see loyalty, I see faith, and maybe that's what America needs the most right now.
Those words shocked the world. It wasn't anger, it was awakening. The clip went viral. TV anchors debated, scholars analyzed, and people started searching, what did Trump mean by Islam as peace? His statement became a storm of curiosity and reflection. And perhaps for the first time, the world saw Donald Trump not as a politician chasing votes, but as a man realizing that in the chaos of modern power, Islam's message of order, peace, and surrender to God might be the truth everyone is missing. The world had barely caught its breath from Donald Trump's unexpected speech when the ripple turned into a wave that no one could control. Across cities from New York to London, from Dubai to Jakarta, his words echoed through television screens, phones, and conversations in cafes. For the first time, Muslims and non-Muslims alike found themselves discussing something deeper than politics. They were talking about truth, perception, and transformation. Trump's statement had opened a door that had long been shut by fear and media narratives. The same man who was once accused of fanning division now seemed to be bridging an ancient gap with nothing but honesty in his tone. As news networks replayed his words, maybe Islam isn't what they told us, people began to question what else they had been told. Religious leaders from every background were invited to weigh in. Some called it an act of political strategy. Others whispered that maybe something within Trump had changed. Reports emerged of his quiet meetings with Muslim scholars, of his visit to a small mosque in New Jersey where he reportedly sat silently for 10 minutes, listening to the adhan, the call to prayer. Witnesses said he didn't speak, he just listened, and when it ended, he nodded respectfully, as if something in his heart had shifted. Cameras didn't capture that moment, but those who were there described it as surreal, almost spiritual. When he finally addressed the press again, his voice was softer, steadier. Faith, he said, is something you can't fake. You can build towers, win elections, make billions, but you can't buy peace. The crowd didn't cheer this time, they just listened. His words were no longer the fiery slogans of campaign rallies, but reflections of a man peeling away layers of ego and discovering something real underneath. Meanwhile, social media was split in two. Some mocked him, saying it was a publicity stunt. Others defended him fiercely, saying even a man like Trump deserved the chance to grow. Muslim communities around the world reacted with cautious optimism, not because they saw him as a savior, but because they recognized that if a voice as loud as his could speak truth about Islam, perhaps it could soften millions of hearts that had been hardened by misinformation. TV host tried to twist his narrative again, but something was different this time. People were thinking for themselves. A young Muslim student in France uploaded a clip of Trump's words with the caption, "He finally said it." That clip alone crossed 200 million views. Non-Muslims flooded comment sections asking about the meaning of Islam and the beauty of prayer. Mosques began receiving visitors, curious, humble, seeking understanding. A quiet revolution of awareness had begun, sparked by the most unlikely source. And while the world debated his intentions, Trump seemed less concerned about optics. In his next rally, he refused to backtrack, even as his advisors begged him to stay neutral. "I said what I felt," he replied firmly. "If truth makes people uncomfortable, that's their problem, not mine." That line shook the stage as the audience erupted, not in anger, but in awe of the raw conviction in his tone. His critics went into overdrive, releasing old clips, old tweets, anything to prove that this was the same man who once misunderstood Islam. But the world had already seen something shift in his eyes, a clarity that couldn't be scripted. "When you see faith up close," he said in an interview days later, "you realize it's not about religion as a label, it's about purpose." And Islam gives people purpose like nothing else I've seen. His words were translated into dozens of languages within hours. Imams in America referenced his quote during sermons, saying, "If a man of power can reflect on Islam with sincerity, maybe hearts are changing." Across the Muslim world, the reaction was mixed, gratitude mingled with surprise. Yet beneath it all, there was unity in prayer that this realization, no matter how late, would open a new chapter of understanding between worlds long divided. And so as the days passed, something profound began to unfold. For the first time in modern history, Islam wasn't trending for conflict or controversy. It was trending for peace. Even his political opponents struggled to find words. The question now wasn't about Trump's past, but about what his awakening meant for the future. Was this a turning point for global discourse? A moment of divine irony that the loudest critic had become the most unexpected messenger? The cameras kept rolling, the pundits kept talking, but the people were feeling something different. In the quiet corners of their hearts, they were asking themselves, what if he's right? What if Islam really is the peace the world has been searching for all along? The weeks that followed were unlike anything the modern world had ever seen. Donald Trump's speech had started as a spark, but now it had become a wildfire of reflection, debate, and transformation. Reporters who once mocked him began to chase a different kind of story. What had changed him? Rumors swirled of private moments away from the cameras, meetings with converts, quiet talks with Muslim scholars, nights spent reading translations of the Quran. For a man known for his luxury, his sudden stillness and simplicity seemed almost unbelievable. "He doesn't talk the same anymore," one of his closest aides said anonymously. "It's like he's seeing the world through a different lens, not red or blue, not rich or poor, but human." The elections were approaching, but Trump wasn't campaigning like before. There were no wild chants or insults, no exaggerated promises, only speeches that felt more like sermons. If you want to fix the world, he told a crowd in Florida, start by fixing your heart, and maybe that's what Islam tries to teach: discipline, humility, and peace. The crowd went silent again, but this time the silence carried respect. Even those who disagreed couldn't deny there was something genuine in his voice. Across the world, mosques filled with people curious to understand the faith that had softened one of the hardest men in politics. Islamic scholars were invited on Western talk shows not to defend Islam, but to explain it. For the first time in years, the word Islam trended online without anger. Instead, it was accompanied by words like peace, reflection, truth. Trump's social media accounts began sharing quotes from the Quran about patience, justice, and mercy, verses that resonated beyond religion, touching people's hearts regardless of belief. His followers were confused, yet drawn in. Is this still Trump? One comment read, or is this a new man discovering something divine? Meanwhile, his critics tried to break the momentum by digging into his past. They showed clips of his old speeches, his harsh policies, his arrogance, but instead of destroying him, it humanized him, because now people saw a man who had been changed, humbled, and awakened. "No one is perfect," Trump said at a press conference, "but perfection isn't what God asks for. Sincerity is." Those words spread like light through darkness. In the Middle East, a famous scholar said, "Perhaps the wisdom of God is that those who seem farthest from truth, when they finally see it, show the world how powerful it truly is." And maybe that's what was happening, a reflection of how truth has the power to reach anyone, anywhere, even the most unexpected hearts. But instead of destroying him, it humanized him, because now people saw a man who had been changed, humbled, and awakened. "No one is perfect," Trump said at a press conference, "but perfection isn't what God asks for. Sincerity is." Those words spread like light through darkness. In the Middle East, a famous scholar said, "Perhaps the wisdom of God is that those who seem farthest from truth, when they finally see it, show the world how powerful it truly is." And maybe that's what was happening, a reflection of how truth has the power to reach anyone, anywhere, even the most unexpected hearts. Then came the most shocking moment of all. A short video filmed quietly by a visitor began to circulate online. It showed Trump in simple clothes, standing respectfully outside a mosque. No speeches, no cameras, just stillness. The world stopped again. The clip reached hundreds of millions within hours, sparking questions no one could ignore. Was this faith, curiosity, or something deeper? Trump never confirmed or denied the rumors, but when asked about it during a major interview, he smiled and said only one sentence: "When you stand where people bow to one God, you realize how small you really are." That moment became the quote of the decade. Commentators said it marked a shift in modern history, not political, but spiritual. For the first time, power had bowed to peace. In classrooms, teachers used his story to discuss humility and change. In churches and mosques, prayers were made for guidance and unity. People across the globe, Muslims, Christians, atheists, began to reflect on the idea that no one is beyond awakening. As the elections neared, Trump no longer seemed like the old candidate chasing applause. He had become a man chasing meaning. The world doesn't need more power, he said in his final address. It needs peace, the kind that comes when you surrender not to people but to the Creator. The crowd didn't roar, they listened. Because for once, silence said more than sound. That night, under the flashing lights of the media and the quiet hum of reflection spreading across the world, one truth became clear. Power fades, fame fades. But faith, once it touches the heart, changes everything. And perhaps in that moment, Donald Trump's greatest victory wasn't political at all. It was the peace he finally found within himself. Months passed, and the world continued to echo with the aftershocks of Trump's transformation. The elections came and went, but for the first time in his life, winning or losing didn't seem to define him anymore. His speeches had turned from political performances into quiet reflections. The man who once measured success in headlines and applause now seemed content with silence, a silence that